You can pour the thickest, most expensive concrete in the world, but if the soil underneath it is toxic, the entire building is going to rot from the bottom up. In our first episode, we pulled up the 1921 charter for the Key West Ku Klux Klan. We read the names of the millionaires, the doctors, and the judges who put on hoods to control America's southernmost city. Then, we looked at how Marcus Garvey's visit terrified them into organizing. But reading a list of names on a piece of paper doesn't show you the structural damage they caused. To see that, we have to look at how they enforced their rule. We have to look at the blood they spilled. We have to look at what happened when the establishment picked a fight with a man who absolutely refused to be intimidated. I'm Coach Kyle. You're listening to Digging Deep, Hidden Blueprints. Today, we're looking at the Christmas Eve murder of a World War I combat veteran named Manuel Cabeza and the corrupt chain of command that allowed a mob to lynch him in the streets of his own hometown. To understand this tragedy, you have to understand the man. The year is 1921. Manuel Cabeza was a Key West native born into a prominent local family of Spanish descent. When the United States entered the First World War, Manuel didn't hesitate. He answered the call. He put on the uniform, shipped out to Europe, and fought in the trenches of France. We are talking about the meat grinder of the Western Front. He survived the freezing mud, the constant artillery barrages, and the mustard gas. He watched his brothers in arms die in the dirt to protect American freedom. When the war ended, Manuel came back to the Florida Keys. Like a lot of combat veterans, he was just looking for peace. He wanted to live his life. He operated a small business, driving a taxi and running a coffee stand. And he had fallen in love. Her name was Angela. She was a mixed-race Bahamian woman, and Manuel moved her into his home. They were living together openly in town. But remember the blueprints we pulled up in episode 1. The Key West establishment was terrified of losing control of the island. The elite had formed Clan Number 42 to enforce absolute white supremacist, 100% Americanism. The Jim Crow South was built on a foundation of strict racial segregation. To men like Exalted Cyclops, Dr. Joseph Yates Porter, and Judge J. Vining Harris, a decorated white combat veteran living openly and unapologetically with a black woman was a massive structural threat. It was a direct defiance of the racial purity laws they were trying to violently enforce. If Manuel got away with it, it meant the Klan didn't have real power. So, the Klan sent Manuel Cabeza a warning. They told him to kick Angela out of his house or face the consequences. But Manuel was a soldier. He had faced down the German army. He wasn't going to take orders from a bunch of local politicians hiding behind bed sheets. He told them to go to hell. The establishment didn't like that, so they sent the Nighthawks. On the night of December 23rd, 1921, Manuel was out working. A gang of Klansmen ambushed him. They dragged him into the dark, beat him, and subjected him to one of the most agonizing, humiliating tortures imaginable. They tarred and feathered him. Now, history books often gloss over this, making it sound like a cartoon prank. Let me put my builder's hat on and explain what hot tar actually is. Pine tar has to be boiling around 130 to 140 degrees Fahrenheit, just to remain liquid enough to pour. The mob stripped the combat veteran naked and poured boiling, sticky liquid over his bare flesh. It causes instant, severe, third-degree burns. When the tar cools, it hardens and binds to the skin. You can't just wash it off. You have to physically peel and scrape it away, ripping off the burned flesh underneath. They coated him in feathers and dumped him in the street as a message to the rest of the island. But here is where the Klan's tactical plan completely backfired. When you ambush a combat-hardened veteran, you don't break him. You trigger his training. Manuel Cabeza didn't cower. He didn't pack his bags and flee the island. He dragged himself home. He painfully peeled and scrubbed the blistering tar off his body. He wrapped his burns, and then he went to his lockbox. He grabbed his gun, and he went hunting. The next day was Christmas Eve. Manuel hit the streets of Key West on a daylight recon mission, looking for the men who had ambushed him. He found one of them on Duval Street, a prominent local Klansman named William Decker. Manuel didn't hide behind a hood. He walked right up to Decker in broad daylight, pulled his weapon, and shot him dead in the street. The local police swarmed Manuel immediately. He surrendered without a fight. He knew the law, and he knew what he had done. He had executed a man in public. He was taken to the Monroe County Jail to await trial. From a structural standpoint, a county jail is supposed to be a fortress. It is designed to keep the inmates in and the public out. But as a foreman, I know that a thick brick wall doesn't mean a damn thing if the guy holding the keys is corrupt. The Monroe County Sheriff at the time was Roland Curry. Let me repeat that last name, Curry, the exact same millionaire dynasty that the Klan leadership was married into. That night, a massive mob of armed Klansmen, some reports say over 300 men, marched on the Monroe County Jail. They didn't have to use dynamite. They didn't have to breach the walls. The deputies on duty looked at the mob, stepped aside, and handed over the keys. It was a complete, systemic failure of leadership. The law enforcement of Key West surrendered a United States veteran to a lynch mob. The Klansmen dragged Manuel Cabeza out of his cell. They beat him mercilessly with clubs and pipes. They tied him to the back bumper of a car and dragged his battered body through the crushed coral rock streets of the island, all the way out to a desolate area near the local cemetery. Then they threw a rope over a palm tree and hung him. The next morning, it was Christmas Day. Key West woke up to the body of a World War I veteran swinging in the ocean breeze. The official government after-action report was a masterclass in cowardice and corruption. A coroner's jury was convened to investigate Manuel's murder, but the jury was packed with the exact same men who ran the local Klan chapter. They looked at a man who had been dragged through the streets by hundreds of people and hung in public, and they officially ruled that Manuel Cabeza had died at the hands of persons unknown. No one was ever arrested. No one was ever charged. The establishment protected its own, burying the truth under the floorboards of the local courthouse. Angela, the woman Manuel loved, was forced to flee Key West in terror, disappearing into history. If you walk down Duval Street today, you won't find a bronze plaque for Manuel Cabeza. The tourism board doesn't want to talk about the combat veteran who was lynched by the city's founding fathers on Christmas Eve. But we aren't here for the sanitized history. A man who put on a uniform and bled for this country in Europe was murdered in his own hometown by cowards hiding behind hoods and badges. We are going to remember his name, Manuel Cabeza. Manuel Cabeza held his ground and he faced the mob like a soldier. That's the game tape for today. Keep your head on a swivel, keep asking questions, and keep digging deep. I'm Coach Kyle, and I'll see you on the next one.